And pro-life Kansans held a statewide rally and March for Life to commemorate the National Day of Prayer for the Legal Protection of Unborn Children. Alan Holdren has that story for us.
Kansas's first post-Roe March for Life. It's also the first major pro-life rally in Kansas since the no vote to last August's Value Them Both amendment, which sought to put limits on abortion in the state. Today, as much as ever, there's reason to march for the unborn here.
We're here in Kansas, of course. Our Value Them Both amendment failed back in August, and so we're here to continue to support all of our legislators who are here in the Capitol, who are working every day to support life. So that's why I'm here, to support them and to pray for them. So
it was rough, definitely a setback. I would call it spiritual warfare, but that doesn't mean that our fight is over. It just means we have to be more specific in the way that we fight.
It's time to change. I'm really disappointed that our Kansas as a state voted incorrectly that last go around. We're trying to protect the mothers and the babies.
Now the battle is up to the states, and Kansas is not pro-life, so we really need to battle for Kansas.
When Kansans went to the polls last August, the Value Them Both amendment was on the ballot. It sought to limit a 2019 Kansas Supreme Court decision declaring abortion a right according to the state constitution, virtually lifting any limits, making abortion eligible for state funding, and rendering all legislation against abortion unconstitutional.
That didn't mean that all pro-life legislation was immediately overturned, but it does mean that every single piece of existing legislation that protects the unborn in the state of Kansas is vulnerable to litigation. It's been 6 months since that no vote, but the disappointment here is still very fresh.
This year we got to celebrate, first of all, the overturn of Roe versus Wade, which was an amazing victory. But we are kind of at a difficult place in our state because we are having to build back from what we lost last year with our amendment loss. And so we really need to step up and say, we are not going away. We are here to support women and babies to the very end, and we will never abandon women and preborn babies.
In Kansas, the bishops have been very active in promoting the pro-life cause, actively supported and took on much of the costs of inviting Kansans to vote yes to the Value Them Both amendment. They've got a strategy for the future here.
It's to do everything we can, and Walking with Moms in Need, which is a national effort by the church, but it's particularly important here. So we've tried to get more resources to our pregnancy resource centers. We want to build up the services for those that might be in a difficult pregnancy, to surround them with a community of support and love.
Archbishop Naumann is reaching out to young people to be the new pro-life generation here, as the state's abortion numbers are quickly rising.
There were many already coming, but there are even more coming to Kansas for abortions because some of our states around us, like Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, they have more protective laws for the unborn. So we're becoming, sadly, a destination state for abortion.
And that's why, on the national front, Kansas has become a key state for the pro-life movement in post-Roe America. Pro-life activist Lila Rose, who gave the keynote at the pre-March rally, says she wanted to be here to show her support for Kansas pro-lifers.
Good morning, Kansas.
Kansas represents a battlefield, and it played out just a few months ago with Value Them Both, and it's continuing to play out as the people of the state are deciding, will we protect children here or not? And there's so many good people in Kansas who are passionate, who want to do the right thing, want to stand for life. And so I think their relentlessness and willingness to persevere and be courageous despite the attacks will in many ways inspire or make other states discouraged. So I not to put too much pressure on Kansas, but what you're doing here is the rest of the country is watching.
As long as unborn life is threatened in Kansas, the movement here and the march will continue.
And EWTN News contributor Alan Holdren joins me now to share even more. Alan, a few short months ago, thank you so much for joining us, by the way, our movement underwent a devastating loss on the Value Them Both amendment in Kansas. So what's the sentiment in Kansas now? I mean, we just saw, but talk to us about the recent march. How do you think all of this is going to play out?
Prudence, just like every March, it was a joyful occasion. People getting together, seeing each other, maybe for the first time in a year since the last March for Life. It was one of hope, I would say. We're down, but we're not out. It was An immediate reaction that came after that value them both amendment was voted down last August was that amongst the people that were part of the Kansans for Life. They had a watch party, and the mood kind of went sour. But the immediate response was, this is not over. We're going to continue to fight this. Archbishop Naumann, he called on the younger generation to step up. In comments to me earlier before the Mass took place, he said that the new generation needs to be on board with this because they are going to be voting for the next amendment that comes up.
Sure. And Alan, how do you think all of this pro-life momentum that we're seeing in the state right now counteracts the current laws that are there? I mean, because of the loss, there's a so-called right to abortion implied in the state's constitution.
I think people are still pretty incredulous. We've always talked about Kansas as being a pro-life state. A part of that was in the confusion after the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Seems like people really didn't read the amendment fully, or they really didn't understand the context in which it was being proposed. If people knew that just about any abortion would be legal in the state of Kansas, if certain legislation was overturned, which that amendment not passing allows for all of those to be open to litigation and to be overturned if they're brought up in a court. If they realize the extent of that, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have, in majority, voted against that amendment. Kansans that showed up for the pro-life rally yesterday are in a minority. There weren't, so many people there that it was representative of all of Kansas. But if you talk to them in their homes, they would tell you, I'm sure in the majority, that they really are pro-life.
Sure, I see. And have you heard from legislators in the state about how they are working to advance more protections for babies right now?
Yeah, actually on the steps of the Capitol yesterday, there were 30 to 40 different legislators, people who were involved in the day-to-day of the Kansas State Legislature working for the pro-life cause. They do have some things that Kansans for Life want to work with legislators on achieving certain things in the aftermath of this Value Them Both amendment. One of them is to get more financing for pregnancy resource centers. There are more than 50 of them across the state of Kansas. And there are other states that give more money to their pregnancy resource centers than Kansas does. They also want to get tax credits like exist in Mississippi or Missouri in order to finance them better. They want children who are born alive during an abortion procedure to receive protection as human beings, to receive health care. And they also want information to be disseminated about how the abortion pill can be reversed by another pill.
Seems like the pro-life movement is alive and well there. Is there anything else to add about the rally and the march, Alan, before we let you go?
It was, in this week of prayer for Christian unity, it really was an ecumenical event. There were Lutherans for Life there. There were evangelical preachers who led prayer. It really was an occasion for everybody to get together. There was a huge Catholic contingent. I think we can build on that here in the state of Kansas. It's just looking to your neighbor, looking to your friends, inviting one more person every year, and you could have a huge demonstration of what I think is largely the public support for the right to life cause.
Well, Alan, thank you so much for continuing to track all of this important stuff going on in Kansas, an important state. Alan Holdren of EWTN News. Thanks.
Thank you, Prudence.